The prosecution rests in the Manafort case, and Strzok is fired. With the very latest is our own Fox News chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge. Busy day today, Catherine.
Well, that's right, Sean, and good evening. The FBI is not commenting on Strzok's termination tonight, which frankly is standard because the Bureau doesn't publicly discuss personnel matters. What's important is that Strzok is now at least the sixth senior official to be fired, demoted, or to leave government service altogether since the scandal broke last year. In a lengthy statement, Strzok's lawyer said the FBI's deputy director overruled the Bureau's disciplinary review that recommended a 60-day suspension and demotion, implying that the decision was political. Strzok, who dodged Fox's questions last month, recently testified under oath that his politics never infected his work.
Like many people, I had and expressed personal political opinions during an extraordinary presidential election. But let me be clear, unequivocally and under oath, not once in my 26 years of defending our nation did my personal opinions impact any official action I took.
Strzok's attorney also singled out the FBI Director Christopher Wray, alleging that Strzok's termination was a departure from, quote, typical Bureau practice and, quote, contradicts Director Wray's testimony to Congress and his recent public assurances. Director Wray recently responded to questions about Strzok and others.
There's a pending personnel matter, and as I said, I want to make sure that we're doing things, following our process, doing things by the book. Our Inspector General report has referred a number of individuals to our disciplinary process, and I think it's very, very important that we let that process, without delay, work itself through and get to a result, as opposed to responding to hue and cry.
In a separate development late today, the prosecution rested its case in the trial of Paul Manafort, the president's former campaign chairman, on bank and tax fraud charges. A Treasury Department official was the last witness for the prosecution, taking the stand for a second time and testifying that Manafort's company with Rick Gates, the government star witness, never filed paperwork for its foreign bank accounts. The judge allowed this testimony, but he was careful to remind the jury that the government had a chance to indict Manafort's company and chose not to, emphasizing to the jury only Mr. Manafort is on trial, and we will learn tomorrow morning if Manafort's defense team will call witnesses and present its own evidence. Sean.
It's going to be interesting. They may not. Here with reaction is President Trump's personal attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Let me start with Mueller. How is this case impacted? Because Strzok is at the heart of all of it. He claims.
I mean, he's played a much bigger role in this than a lot of the media wants to admit. I mean, first of all, he was there at the very beginning. He wrote all the initial documents justifying this investigation. He ran it for 11 months. He conducted the critical interview of Flynn with the very strange situation where Flynn pled guilty to a lie that the FBI said he wasn't guilty of. Go figure that out. He's the one who was carrying the dossier and using the dossier to justify the FISA wires. That has to be all unraveled. There's no doubt that there are 4 false affidavits filed with the FISA court. Fraud. Lying in an affidavit to the FISA court. The guy responsible for those was largely Strzok. He gathered the evidence, non-evidence. The dossier is absurd. It's
a political document bought and paid
totally
for.
ridiculous. It's
Russian document.
It says provably false things, like Cohen was in Prague. He wasn't in Prague. It says that there were real estate deals with the Russians. There were no real estate deals with the Russians. It has Trump.
The hookers in the bed was my.
Yeah. He was with. I mean, they have evidence he was with hookers in a bed.
Debunked. Yeah,
debunked. Completely debunked. Got the dates all wrong. It's a cut and paste job by a down-and-out ex-spy, English spy, who hated Trump, and was paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC.
But they spread this information, Mr. Mayor, to lie to the American people, too, and lie to the court.
The Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, is hiding those affidavits on the grounds that the affidavits contain national security information. Well, my goodness, here are the things we need to know about it. Was the fact that Hillary Clinton and the DNC, the people who paid this, was that pointed out to the judge?
Right.
Because if it wasn't, you got a glaring omission. wasn't pointed out that Steele, during the course of this, was fired by the FBI? Were his problems in his background exposed to the judge? I mean, when you present this guy, was he presented as a fully reliable informant, or were the questions, you have to do that in an affidavit. I wrote many of these affidavits.
They never told the court in these applications that Hillary paid for it. They purposely withheld that information.
Well, that would have been a non-starter.
But they never verified any of the information in there anyway.
So here's the point. Strzok created a false document. When we say, is there any evidence that his bias led to action that he took against Trump? Yeah. He perjured himself in an affidavit in order to start his insurance policy investigation. They were hoping they could do something with that before the election. But they ran into the same problem Mueller runs into. The president didn't do anything wrong. They couldn't find any evidence. They struck out. On a couple of days before he was inaugurated, they had to proclaim there was no evidence of collusion, which is not a crime anyway.
Is there any update since you were on with us last, and that is that you responded to Mueller in terms of any potential that there'll be a discussion with the president?
No, they think they have all the time in the world, I guess. I don't know. They haven't responded.
Said it should be over by September.
Well, I think that we are running into a real big problem for them. If they try to drag this thing much into September, you've got a very clear violation of the Justice Department policy not to interfere with elections. Comey was just excoriated for that by Horowitz. It'll just be another list of their irregularities, their unethical performance, their unwillingness to follow sensible rules. They could have done this. We could have concluded this interview thing 2 months ago and decided yes or no on it. And their report could be done by now. It looks like they're slowing down. You know, they're running out the clock.
The media would look at the 2005 tax case that has nothing to do with Russia, nothing to do with the campaign, nothing to do with the president. Manafort tax case from 2005 is the trial of the century. Okay, that case. Well, that's really how they're portraying it. But more seriously, when we talk about Strzok and Comey and McCabe and Page and all these other people in the FBI and the DOJ at the highest levels, do you see crimes?
Oh, absolutely. I just told you one. The perjury on the affidavit. I was telling you about Hillary crimes a year before Comey outlined them all. I'm pretty good at picking out crimes.
How did she get off scot-free in all this?
She got off because it was a fixed investigation, a totally phony fixed investigation.
Can she still be indicted?
Run by Peter Strzok, who then turns around. The dossier is obtained on the day that they dropped the case against Trump, against Hillary. So that case gets dropped, and they have to even up the score
the next day
and go after Trump the next day. Now, the reality is, I'm going to tell you, and we don't have the time to go into it, we can do it later. I'm going to tell you who orchestrated, was the quarterback for all this. It isn't just Strzok. He's a bit of a puppet. Then there's Mueller. He's a puppet. People working for him some of them are really...
I have a funny feel you're about to drop a bomb on me. Go ahead.
The guy running it is Brennan. And he should be in front of a grand jury.
Is Brennan.
Brennan,
CIA director.
Brennan took an affidavit, a dossier, that unless he's the biggest idiot intelligence agent that ever existed, although he never really did much intelligence work, it's false. You can look at it and laugh at it. He peddled it to Harry Reid. That led to the request for the investigation. So he takes a false affidavit, a false dossier. He gets the senators involved, and a couple of Republican senators, and they demand an investigation. Totally phony investigation. Now, why can't we get an investigation when there are clear facts showing possible violations of the law?
Why can't we?
Even in the order appointing Mueller, which is completely illegitimate, they don't point out any crime. You have to point out a crime under the independent counsel regulations. They don't point it out. We have lots of crimes, and we can't get Sessions to move and appoint an independent counsel. He's recused from it. He's recused from everything. And Rosenstein is too much involved in it, and they're possible witnesses.
By the way, Rosenstein signed the last FISA warrant.
Well, that's why he's a possible witness and possible anything else.
Mr. Mayor, great to see you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Independent counsel to investigate the investigators.
When we come back, Frank Luntz will respond to a claim of Omarosa that she's making about him, Geraldo Rivera, Pastor Darrell Scott, and Laura Trump. All coming up straight ahead.
For more on this, let's bring in the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. His organization has played a leading role in requesting documents related to Peter Strzok's role in the Russia investigation. Let me straight off the bat get your take to his being officially fired. short time ago?
Well, it's long overdue, and it's a body blow to the Mueller investigation. Strzok is an architect of the Russia collusion theory, which we know is fraudulently based. And there'd be no Mueller investigation without Peter Strzok. He was instrumental as the lead investigator. He certainly was behind the collusion with Fusion GPS, the FISA court documents. All of that is a senior official in the FBI. And the IG concluded that maybe some of his activity was impacted by his animus to President Trump or then candidate Trump. He should have been nowhere near either the Clinton or the Trump investigations. And the president tweeted, "We got to reopen the Clinton investigation because of people like Peter Strzok. And frankly, we need to shut down the Mueller operation because it's been corruptly formed and with people like Peter Strzok at its center."
You know, you're the guy that always gets all the documents that people can't get. You heard Bret Baier before you, and he was talking about how, you know, word is that Lisa Page's testimony did not match up with what Peter Strzok said. Have you heard that, and how do you eventually get access to that?
Well, you know, it's up to Congress to release that testimony. Congress isn't subject to the Freedom of Information Act, and that's why we have to sue in court the agencies directly to get some of the documents Congress has looked at privately but won't release publicly, or in the case of testimony, won't release publicly. So Page's testimony needs to be publicized as quickly as it can so that we have fuller information. You know, and we're right now are battling the FBI for the text messages of Andrew McCabe, the number 2 at the FBI who was corruptly fired. And when you look back at the FBI and the Department of Justice during the Obama administration, you've had Comey fired for misconduct, Andrew McCabe fired for misconduct, Strzok fired for misconduct, Lisa Page demoted, all of whom had a hand in this Russia investigation that Mueller's now running with.
Yeah.
Mr. Mueller needs to be questioned, frankly, about how he used Mr. Strzok and why he was let go, and no one was told about it for 4 months, the reasons behind his being let go. Namely his anti-Trump animus as uncovered by the IG in the text messages.
So
unbelievable.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. I know that you've been behind trying to get those text messages related to Andrew McCabe and his wife Jill McCabe and her 2015 run for state senate, in which she took money from, quote, Hillary people. Why is it that you want to see those texts? Because do you expect to see some sort of quid pro quo in there, or what do you think is in there?
Well, we are asking for text messages on behalf of a retired FBI agent, Jeffrey Danek, about the Clinton email investigation. We suspect he was texting Andrew McCabe, like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, about the Clinton email investigation, and we suspect there's going to be some interesting material there. And certainly now the FBI has told us they don't want to even look at those text messages, let alone turn them over to us. This is just typical of what's going on at the Justice Department and FBI. They don't think they answer to Congress, they don't answer to the president, and they don't answer to the rule of law.
Yeah.
And we hope the courts intervene to get us the messages. And the president tweeted over the weekend in a way that suggests he might intervene to get these text messages public. That would be good, too.
Real quick, we only have a couple seconds. Who is this new retired FBI agent that you're talking about? How did you get onto him, and what do you think the connection is?
Well, Jeffrey Danek is a retired supervisory FBI agent who we represent, who would ask for the text messages of Andrew McCabe. He had experience in record retention policies at the FBI. He suspected there'd be text messages, so we asked specifically for them, and we've been getting the runaround for almost a year from the FBI on them. Why are they sitting on the text messages of this corrupt FBI agent? And you can bet, because they know they're just like Lisa Page and Peter Strzok's text messages, they blow it wide open, certainly with respect to the Clinton email cover-up.
Interesting. Tom Fitton, thank you for coming on and staying on the story. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.